Potomac Beads. Join me while creating the Astral Pendant, featuring a Par Puca cab and our QuadBow beads. If you need any materials, check out the links below to shop with us online. We're going to begin the Astral Pendant by using our 11O seed beads, which are the Duracoat Galvanized Champagne. I have 15O Delicas here, and they are in the transparent Ruby or AB. I have my Par Puca cab, which is an 18mm cab in the opaque aqua bronze. And then some QuadBows we'll be getting in a little bit later when we come and do the sides in the white baby blue luster. Some 2mm round crystals in the metallic bronze iris. And then some round duo minis in jet bronze. To begin, I have 42 of my 11O seed beads on 5 feet of green Wildfire beading thread with a size 12 needle. The 42 number is important because that's going to be our bezel for our cab. You want to make sure you have exactly 42. And what we're going to do is round this out, sewing through a couple beads just to get away from our stop bead. That's going to round this out to our original circle here. And then what we're going to do is start to add our 15 O's. We're adding our 15O Delica beads in groupings of 3 above every other seed bead. So I'm going to pick up 1, 2, 3 of my delicas. The bead I'm coming out of, I'm going to sew back through from the opposite side. So my thread's coming out towards the top there. I'm going to sew into the bottom and then through the next 2 beads. So it's going to look like you're sewing through a total of 3 beads. That's going to decorate that outer edge with 3 beads right there on top. Again, 1, 2, 3 of your 15s. Go back through the bead that your thread is currently coming out of, and then the next 2 beads as well, and out. You're going to continue with these groups of 3 the whole way along the front of the project. So you're going to go in here every other bead. You're going to get 21 groupings because we have 42 beads, 21 groupings right now of those 3 delicas sitting on top of the whole outer circle. Once you get to the end of the circle, you have all of these groupings of 3 sitting over every other bead. And as I add my last group of 3, I'm going to sew back through that first 11O seed bead that my thread was coming out of. When I pull that, it's going to bring those Delica beads right along the top here. And what we're going to do is step up. To step up, we want to come out the top of the Delica beads. So when we're going through, we created 3 beads. And naturally, 1 bead is going to kind of sit lateral there while the other 2 sit on the vertical. We want to come out bead number 2 or the top there. What we're going to do now is sew around the whole entire ring and circle that we just made, catching on to that top Delica in each one of those little peaks. In between each Delica, we're going to add 1 more Delica. So you're going to add 1 Delica, sew through the next of your peak beads. Add a Delica, sew through the next peak bead, and so on and so forth. What that's going to do is make a seamless look of a line of Delicas the whole way around the outer edge of the cabochon. As you're sewing around and adding all of these Delicas in, you just want to be aware that this is going to start to curve toward the back or curve in to create the bezel. Because the Delica bead here is smaller, the 15O Delica is smaller than the 11O seed bead that sits around. That's how you're getting that upper edge and the bezel to hold in our cabochon. If you're doing a Rivoli, you can do the back the same exact way as you're doing the front. I'm using the cabochon, so we're going to do the back just a tiny little bit different since it doesn't need any curvature to the back. I'm continuing to go around here, adding in 1 Delica bead between each one of the top of those peaks. Just like I did on the opening ring now, I'm closing up that seamless ring of my Delica beads, and I'm sewing on the last one here and then also back through the first couple in that rotation. As I pull, you can see it rounds it out to pull it in, so that way when we get to our back, the cab will sit right into the interior. From here, what we're going to do is we're going to work our thread to the back of the design. So I have my loop there, or I have my rounded edge there, and once you're coming out of one of the Delicas that is connected to the group of 3, you're going to sew down through that third delica, because remember you're coming out of the top two. You're then also going to sew down into the 11-0 seed bead that your thread is currently coming out of. I'm going to sew also over to the next 11-0. On the back here, we're going to do the exact same thing, but we're going to do this every 6 beads. So we did it every other on the first go around. We're going to do it every 6 beads here, which is going to get us a total of 7 of our groups of 3. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 of my delicas, go back through that same bead that my thread is coming out of, and then I'm going to count over a total of 7 beads. The one I'm going through, I'm going stringing through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and out right there. Once you come out that 7th bead, we're going to repeat that same thing that we did on the starting side with our 15 seed beads going along the inner edge. Once you finish up every 7 beads here, adding on, or every 6 beads here rather, adding on your little delicas, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to come back through and step up through that first and that second bead, just like we've been doing. And then we're going to get these just like the front to sit along the back. To sit along the back just as we did in the front, we're adding Delica beads in between those peaks. So if you had trouble kind of seeing the front at all, you're going to do the exact same thing to the back. We're just doing less because we're adding less in. I have an addition of 5 of my Delica beads, and I'm sewing through the next top 15 Delica. And then pulling that in. 5 more go on. Go through the next top Delica there and pull those in place. As you're going around, you're going to want to get to the point that you put your cab in there and you start pulling them toward the back of the project there. I'm going to continue around, adding in my 5 Delicas as I pull it toward the back so my cab sits perfectly in the middle. Just like I did along the front here, I'm going back through a couple beads as I add in my last 5 beads in my Delica row. So I'm going to go back here. And then for our final go round, I'm going to sew through just the 5 beads that I added. So I'm going to sew through the 5 seed beads that I added, skip over that middle bead that we sewed through, that we did the sew through on, and go through the next 5 beads. This is going to pull it in even tighter a little bit to the back and make it so that your cabochon is good to go. Oops, I'm going to keep pulling that in there. And as I do so, I kind of push the cabochon into place and make sure that it sits nice and nestled right towards the front. Once we're done with this inner row of getting all of our 5 rows of 5 here connected, we're going to flip to the side of the piece and we are going to start adding our QuadBow beads. To add the QuadBow beads, I want to come out through, so here's my ending here, back through here, with a nice tight pull. So that's your netting along the back that's going to hold your cab in place. From here, we're going to go back through the 15-0 Delica right there on the side. I'm going to go back down the Delica that sits on the edge. And I'm going to sew through my 11-0 seed bead that my thread was originally coming out of. Once I sew back through my 11-0 seed bead, I'm going to get ready with my QuadBows to start adding them. In addition to the QuadBows, you're going to want to get some of your 2mm round beads out so you can put them in between the QuadBows as we're adding them. Now it's time to put on our QuadBow beads. So they're a 4-hole bead and we're going to be going through the first hole here. I want you to put on your thread and needle 115, 111, one quad bow through the first hole, and you want to have it so it's facing in. One of your 2mm rounds, another quad bow, and then 11 and 15. We're going to repeat this 6 times as we go around the pattern. From here, we're going to go around the outer edge. I'm coming out of a bead. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and sew through bead number 7. When you sew through bead number 7, then you're going to come out and repeat the exact same thing. Just going to lay right there, make sure it's not twisted, and it's just going to lay and hang out there as you're working on it. Same thing, Delica 11, quad bow so that you're going through the back end and coming out towards the open end. Add your 2mm, add the quad bow so that you're going in towards the open, out towards the arch, and then the 11 and the Delica. Let those fall down next to your cabochon. And then again, we're repeating, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bead right before my stop bead. Go through there, come on out, and repeat. So you're going to end up with a total of 6 groupings of your quad bow around the center of your cabochon. I'm going to keep going and finish up this round of adding on the quad bows. As you finish adding in your last set of your quad bow bead, you're going to be sewing through that same 11-0 that you started with. So you're going to sew through that same 11-0 that you started with when you count over your 7. And once you're through there, I want you to bring your thread and needle up into the quad bow. So to do so, you're going to go up through the Delica bead as well as the 11-0 and into the first hole of that first quad bow bead that you added. Once you're through that first hole of the quad bow, I want you to step up to the second hole, reversing your thread. By the time we add beads in, you'll never see the thread in there. You're going to go from the bottom hole to the second hole of the quad bow. When you're coming out between the quad bows where they're touching here, you're going to pick up one 11-0 seed bead and then sew into the second hole of the next quad bow. When you're coming out through that second hole of the quad bow, I want you to add in your round duo bead. So your round duo is going to sit right in there with one of your 2mm beads, one of your round duo bead, and another 2mm bead. You're going to go over to the next hole of the next open quad bow and sew through hole number 2. So this is going to proceed the whole way around, just adding in one 11, this round, between those quad bows, and then another set of your 2mm round duo 2mm as you go in between the quad bows above the crystals. So you're going to do everything, because we're on sets of 6 now, 6 times as we go around the piece. As you finish adding in your last crystal, round duo crystal, you're going to sew through your last quad bow bead, and then I also want you to sew through that first 11-0 as well as that second quad bow bead. From there, you're going to take your thread and needle and we're going to reverse it from that bottom hole there to the third hole. So coming out of the second hole, we're reversing it to the third hole, and when you see it there, then with that thread, you're going to pull that in. Once again, you won't see the thread by the time you add your seed beads. This rotation now, we are going to add 2 of our Delica beads and one 11-0 as we go into the second hole of the round duo bead mini. As we go into that second hole, then we're going to progress the whole way along the piece through the third hole of the quad bow. 2 15s, one 11 through the second hole of the round duo mini. Coming out through the second hole of the round duo mini, then I want you, and just give a tight pull there, I want you to do that in reverse. 1 11, 2 15s through the next quad bow and straight on to the following one and through. Coming out, then we're going to repeat this a total of 6 times, just like we're doing around in the circle. 2 15s, 1 11 through the second hole of our round duo mini. As we go through there, 1 11, 2 15s, and through the next 2 quad bows through the third hole. So I've gotten that done I've finished that on 2 of my center sections here. I'm going to continue with the next 4 to finish that up. As we finish this last step, we're going to proceed through the last 2 quad bows. Remember, my thread was going through there originally. And then the first 2 15 delicas as well as 11-0 and out. When we come out there, we're going to add 1, 2, and 3 of our 11-0 seed beads. You're going to sew through the next 11-0, going right over the top of the round duo mini, and that's going to cap off the round duo mini there. And then we're going to step up into the 4th hole of the quad bow. To do so, I want you to add in there 2 more of your 15s, step up into that 4th hole, and when you're coming out of the 4th hole then, you're going to take 1 more 11 and put it between those quad bows. Continuing on, 1, 2 Delica beads through the 11 that's already there. Above the round duo mini, we're going to add 3 more 11s. Go into the next 11 that's already there, and just the 11, as we get ready to go into the 4th hole of our quad bow, added with 2 15-0 delicas. Sew through that 4th hole, and when you come out through the 4th hole of that quad bow, add 1 11-0 seed bead, and on to the next. This is the same rotation the whole way around the piece. We're going to add those in, and then as we work around, we'll get ready to add our bail between one of the sets of our QuadBow beads. Finishing up then with these 4th holes here, you're adding your last 2 of your Delica beads, and I'm going to go back through that first bead that my thread was coming out of, back through those 3 first beads, or those 3 top beads, the next 11-0, and then we're also going to progress up through my 2 Delica beads. This is going to put me in the position to go through the quad bow and then also through my 11-0 seed bead. My original 11-0 there between my quad bows is where I'm going to end up putting my bail. Now you can choose however you want to add this bail. You don't have to follow me, but rather than adding a wire gird or anything, I'm going to add a seed bead bail right to the top here of the piece. To begin the bail, I want you to pick up 1 and 2 of your Delica beads, and then sew back through that same 11-0 seed bead. After that, those 2 Delicas will kind of sit right there at the top in almost a herringbone style. I want you to go through 1, add 2 beads, and go down through bead number 2. That's going to put those next 2 right on top of those first 2. After these first 2 Delicas then, I'm going to switch to 11-0 seed beads. So I'm going to go from the right hand side then, back up through those 2 Delicas on the left there. And I'm going to square stitch on 2 11-0 seed beads. The 2 11-0s go on, and I go down through the right Delica. And those will sit right there. Back up through the left Delica now that sits beside that one. And then also up through the 11-0 seed bead. You can see how that creates just kind of a nice little triangle look there at the top. From here, I'm going to continue with that square stitch with my 11-0 seed beads. So I'm going to add 2 11-0 seed beads. Go ahead and sew down through the one on the right hand side. And then sew through the one on the left hand side, but at the same time sew up through the first one that you just added. That's square stitch. 2 beads coming out the left, I go down the right, and then over to the left through the last 2 beads. The one that sits from the previous row, as well as the one that I just added. I'm going to continue doing this several times, so that way I can get my bail in place. And you're going to probably do about 10 or 11 times of that square stitch to make a nice substantial bail for this substantial pendant. After 11 or so of times of that square stitch. I'm going to add 1 11/0 seed bead instead of 2. Go down through the side. That'll put that 1 right on the top there. Go back through the right hand side, as well as back through that 1 bead. Once you're coming out that 1 single bead, you're going to fold the bail over toward the back of the piece here, and you're going to sew through that 11/0 seed bead that your thread was originally coming out of between the quad bows. That's going to round that bail out to the back, so that way it hangs out right along the back there. From here, go back to that bead that your thread is coming out of and go through that one from the opposite direction. So you're just sewing basically in around, connecting those 2 beads together. From here, you're going to go back through that first original 11/0 there. And at the same time, I'm going back through my quad bow. That's after it. I'm going to downgrade through the quad bow into hole number 2 down. So we're coming out of 4, really going down to 3. Now I'm going to go down to 2 through the seed beads, over to the next quad bow. I'm going to go down to quad bow hole number 1. And basically what I'm doing is I'm working my thread and needle back to the back of the project so I can tie off my thread ends together. Taking my thread and needle then, I'm going to go back through the 11/0 and the 15/0 that sits right below it. And now I'm ready to bring my thread and needle back toward that starter bead. Go back through all your seed beads, right in a line, wiggling if you need to. I try to go through as many as I can at a time, but you may have to take them out as you round that corner there. And once you get it back through there, then all you need to do to complete your pendant is take off your stop bead and tie your thread ends together. Once your thread ends are tied together, your piece is completely finished. I'm going to take my thread zap or my thread burner then and burn those edges down towards the back of the project like they are here, so that way you don't see them at all. You can see the piece on the back too is nice and pretty. It has a different netting along the back than it does along the front. And it's a good forgiving way to bezel set either a cabochon or a pendant with that nice almost kind of right angle weave style, but a quick right angle weave style. I'm going to burn down those thread edges towards the back of the piece. And your astral pendant is all finished. Beautiful, nice, big pendant, easy to do as you work with those quad bows and create that simple bezel around that Par Puca cab. Thanks so much for joining me in creating this astral pendant. Remember, if you do need any of the supplies for the astral pendant, you can check out the links below to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. Remember also to give a comment below, say what colors you're going to do it in. If you're changing up any sizes using a Rivoli versus a cabochon, please comment below so others can learn from you as well. Also, if you want to, you can subscribe by pressing that little subscribe button if you haven't yet to join in this amazing community and not miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. As always, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you've learned a lot and have fun creating your astral pendant.